at all your clothing where the pandemic lasted, you're gonna throw away all the clothes that you wore during the pandemic. Just because you got all riled up, you'll feel that this is necessary. I'm a battling addiction, and the one way I do is to cope is going onto the internet and looking at videos of addicts who are worse than me. I'm trying to switch it up so I can caper it down. There's a keto little tea drink I'm experimenting with, and there's like a mock powder. Add some seltzer with some turbo force. And then something wrong, this is what separates in a cow's stomach. So, where it's gonna be, if you don't change, then you're not going to be accepted. God created everyone in his image, and then if that's not good enough, the person who created the mRNA technology is putting out his image, proclaiming that he is God. Be accepted in the future, you have to change to his image. And that's really creepy. You're not going to be accepted. By default, that means that you're non-essential. But over here, it's, things that are wasteful. You throw away your clothes because they've been a lockdown. When over here, you've got stuff as this, deemed no longer useful. Where when I look at this, I look like it's got a little bit more that it could do if I want to pop it, have fun popping it. It was enjoyable. Well, I'm not a meteorologist, but I know like two things. Cows are sitting down. It means that it's probably going to rain. And the more cows that are sitting down, it's more likely. Weather the storm. You just have to look out and see if there's any open sky. Be accepted when things are inevitable, like the older you get and you sit on the ground, it looks more distasteful. Just as like the more that it rains, and if you go outside and you're running in the rain, you're going to look like you're eating. And so when I'm talking to the Bartista females about like milking, it's just because I think farming is the number one thing you can do to be honoring your roots of the early settlers being pioneers in the wide open prairie. He's talking about like a dragon fruit. I think you can milk anything. When I saw the dragon fruit leche, I thought I'd strike up the conversation with them in the name of science, and they both were like shunning away from the idea of milking. To me, it was like really odd how like they didn't want to talk about that at all, let alone it was on the menu, and I actually did want to know more about it, but they didn't have the opportunity to know more about it because all that stuff is just sent in packaging. It's not even made in the back. Not even made in the back by them. So they're not even like informed of any of the processing of milking, because it's all like saturated with like ingredients that have already been preset and sent to them in mail. And all these self-identity ways of looking better is just where it comes like a slap in the face, where if you're not designed right, then you need to be synced different. And what this really hurts when I see it is that I went to my cousin's wedding in Utah, and this was in a hotel called the Great American. And then across the street was an upgrade from the Great American. It was like the Best American or something. And so he stayed in that one because he was on his like marriage, so he was trying to get this suite. But then at the Great American where I was at was also like a getaway, a fundraiser. They were doing a camp. There was all these children, and they were all under a different structure of body because they had like deformed faces and probably Down syndrome. And this one girl was like wearing a sun hat, and this is a hat with like really long brims, and she had it pulled down over her face, so you couldn't really see that she was having a different like face unless you really looked at her. And I just like kept seeing her pop up randomly, and so it was unmistakable. But it was really hurtful that nowadays you have to change your body in order to be considered normal. The new normal is that if your original make isn't good enough, that you have to change in order to be like accepted for going to like different venues. And so this would entail that your original wasn't what it should have been. This is actually precluding that in the future, if you're not what you should have been, then it would have been the mistake for you to have been in the first place. Parents didn't do a good enough job when they were doing their job to have you. So in Asia, everyone's real like preserved for respecting others. That's great, but in the Western culture, you're starting to see this more so. Whereas if you get everyone riled up, the camera is gonna get cut short. Their likelihood of stepping out and being more open is obscured to a minimization. And this is what a down society, where, you know, we could get hit with a bug next year and not only is your taste gone, but also is the ability to produce fruit. And so what I asked them is that there's this thing on the menu called dragon fruit leche. And so I was trying to strike a conversation because leche is milk and I'm into like milking things. I went a step further and said that in Spanish, leche is milk. And they're just like, okay. And they clearly didn't want to talk about it either. So that was what ended both of them. Furthermore, this looks like a duck. Feathers can wick out water. It's that their feathers are layered and they're really tight together. The water can't find a route into its skin. So do the polar bears. And polar bear skin is actually black. It's just that their fur is clear, even though it looks white. It's no different than fishing wire, where you get one line of fish line, you can see that it's clear. But if you wrap the fishing line onto your fishing reel, the fishing reel looks white. It's the same exact thing, just correlated differently. This is why the density onto a skate gives off a projection that correlates to it. The projection would be being white. The state would be the entire fishing reel, and the density would be one string versus all the string together. And I had a dream last night. I was dealing with triangulation, and my friend was helping me draw lines. And the issue wasn't even the subset that was off center. It was he didn't have enough time because he had to watch his son. But the allegory here was having to not bypass, or else you'll end up off center. And I'm not ragging on people who have lost a limb, because usually if you're in war you'd get a medal for that. And so what lizards do when they lose their tail is they have the ability to grow it back, and I can guarantee you this is from a triangulation. They were off center because the shape was like a it's so that when you drew a diagonal within it, it was asymmetric to the structure. This is kind of accurate because with shutters, okay, the shutter's a camera lens and it shuts. It does so on like this spiral, as so they overlap each other when they're condensing and opening and contracting and contracting and detracting. Good God. The main thing is that it's meant to overlaps. It's able to do it very quickly, and so you match up your shutter speed and now you've got yourself a quantum, because when stuff starts blinking really quickly, it's like a fence or brushing by it really quickly, like, and you're able to look at the thing behind it is getting polarized. because it's getting shut out and shut in very quickly that it makes like wave ordeals. Stuff like behind it is really wavy, but with a shutter lens it's so great because it's stationary and it can do it.